Well, it's a bit chilly, but it's a lovely morning for it nevertheless. Let's go. Right, well, this is my 1928 Velocette that I'm going to show you. Let's get it outside so we can have a good look. There we go. Light and easy. Fantastic machine. Well, this is my 1928 Velocette 350cc overhead cam. It's a model KN, which is a 350cc overhead camshaft Velocette. The K stands for camshaft because Velocette was founded by a German, Goodman, who anglicised his name to Goodman. So K was for camshaft rather than the C. And the N, nobody seems to know what it stands for. I was always told it stood for normal, and that's what it says in Ivan Rhodes' book of letters, and he is the Velocette guru, so he should know. Anyway, so what you've got here is a race-winning engine from 1926. Not this particular bike, but the Velocette won as a fairly small manufacturer, much smaller than Triumph or BSA and Norton, but they actually won the junior and senior TT on this bike, so it was competing against 500cc bike. As you can see, it's got the rocker gear is exposed. Yeah, you've got this tiny little, dainty little oil feeds for the top end there, and so it's not a total loss engine, but obviously you're going to lose a lot of oil out of the top end there. It does actually need a good clean. It needs cleaning every time it goes out, really. There you go. Covered in oil. So this bike is a fantastic machine to ride. It handles really well and it stops nicely. And I've got modern tyres on it. The purists do scoff at them, but they grip the road. They've got a fantastic profile. You get nice lean on it. Really lovely bike. And it's just so light and easy to manage. It's so tiny. It's got a name. It's my only bike that's got a name, and it's called Kylie, after Kylie Minogue. Small but perfectly formed, and a superstar. Yeah, I don't normally name my bikes. I think it's a bit fluffy, and I'm not really a fluffy person. But this one has a name because it's just such a nice bike, and it'd be the first one out of the garage if there was a fire, I have to say. It's just a treasure. As you can see, it's fairly minimalist, which is what I really like. There's no lighting set on it. The only bit of electrical wire on it is the HT lead here. That's it. There's no brake light on it. You didn't need a brake light on it at this age. There's no speedo on it. You didn't need a speedo on it at this age. You don't need an MOT. Free tax. What's not to like? Quick release petrol cap here. Like that. Andre steering damper attached to the tank there. Give you some stability there. So what the kind of thing you've got here is the overhead camshaft engine is actually really advanced for the time. And we've got an Oldham coupling here to drive it, and it's shimmed as well, I think, in both dimensions. So there's quite a lot of setting up to do with an engine like this. Yeah, and the oiling system is not that straightforward. It's got an internal oil pump, but it has to be adjusted so that the top end is getting about, I think it's about 8 to 10 pounds of pressure that's coming into the top end. Because if it's more pressure than that, you tend to think, oh, you want high oil pressure. But if there's more than 8 to 10 pounds at the top end, it means the bottom end's not getting enough lubrication. So it's, it takes a lot of setting up. But once set up, they're a really good bike, really. Yeah, it's got the standard exhaust on it. I had one of the club members, one of the Sunbeam Club members, that actually made that. There's a reproduction one that's actually made for me, which is great. It came with a fishtail on it, which I think the slightly later versions of the model had the fishtail on, but it didn't really fit and it fouled with the rear stand. And it was the wrong silencer, so this actually tucks in quite nicely into the rear stand, as you can see. But not as glamorous as a fishtail. The main thing you have to do when you're riding it is remember to switch the oil on. It's got a tap on the bottom of the oil tank. Don't forget to turn the oil tap on, otherwise you're going to seize your engine. It's fairly easy to ride. You've got a twist throttle on it. This is the advanced retard, and that's about it really. It's pretty minimal. So you're doing the engine management, you're doing the ignition management yourself with the advanced retard, and then you've got a decompressor to start it. You don't need the decompressor to kick it over, but it saves damaging the engine and makes it a lot easier. Yeah, so this bike is foot change, which for 1928 is pretty advanced actually, and Velocette were one of the first to do this, if not the first. So what they've done, you can see you've got your gearbox here, and then this foot change unit is like a bolt on top of the gearbox there. And yeah, it's fairly, there's a lot of slack in it, but it does the job. Having said that, it's so tiny you can actually just lean down and change with your hand anyway. And I do believe Velocette were the first manufacturer to offer a foot change, and it was an optional extra. So you've still got the holes on the side of the tank for hand change on it. It's still got its original 3-speed gearbox. I think a couple of years later they brought out a 4-speed gearbox, and a lot of people upgraded their bikes, but I'm not fussed really. It's a 3-speed bike. Like with all these old bikes, you ride it to the engine and gearbox. So once you're in top gear with this, you don't want to back down and back off and drop into second. You want to stay going. But the whole bike is kind of race orientated for what looks like such a tiny machine. But of course, lightness gives you speed. It weighs nothing really. Yeah, so I bought this bike in about 2006. Actually, at Romney Marsh bike jumble. Plug. And it was actually one of the store holders had bought it along, and it was in the back of the van, and I saw it there, and it had, I couldn't see the whole thing, but I could see the twin down tube frame, which I've always admired in frame design. I think twin down tube frame was good, and I wasn't really that sure what it was when I got it home, and but I just really like the look of it. It sounds very ignorant of me, but nobody knows everything. And started doing my research on it, and when I first bought it, it seized up every 5 miles. It would nip up. It'd obviously get too hot and nip up. So eventually we had to have we had to basically have the engine apart and buy a new piston. The piston was so worn it was just seizing up all the time. And now it's a really, really nice little bike to ride. There's some folk, they do the right thing and they do the research and they say, oh yes, I want to get this. Yes, oh I need that. But I don't really. What I do like to buy is pre-war cami bikes. That's what all my money goes on if I can find a nice one. But yeah, I like the bike because it's not been restored. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of restored bikes really. I mean, obviously sometimes you have to do that because they've gone beyond a certain point. But I've always thought, well, it is old. Why shouldn't it look old? A bit like me really. But you've got all these scabby old bits on the petrol tank. I don't care as long as it's sound mechanically. That's good for me. When I first got it, we went to the Isle of Man that year, and this is before we did the work on the engine. And basically, Rick ended up towing me quite a lot, which is always good fun being towed by a motorcycle. It's interesting. The main thing you have to remember is when you're being towed is never tie the tow rope on. So if it all goes wrong, you just let go of the rope. Otherwise, you kind of get in danger of getting pulled over. And like with any towed vehicle, you're the person being towed is the person that does the braking. So I actually was being towed behind a much bigger bike. I think Rick was on the 650 A10, and I actually burned all the paint off the front brake hub. See that bubbling there. So yeah, somebody was disbelieving me the fact that it would get that hot, to actually bubble the paint, but it did. Yeah, sadly this isn't the right front brake on it. It's British Hub Company, fairly generic front brake, but it does the job. Would be nice to get the right front wheel on it, but I haven't had one turn up yet, so I'm just on the lookout. Something will turn up. But my feeling with any bike is it's not got the correct front wheel on it, say, but it's on the road, and when you're out and about, you might well find one. And you're having the use of it as well, rather than it sitting in the garage waiting for every single last bit to come. It's a great bike. I mean, nowadays, obviously, it's 1928. It's nearly 100 years old. It's kind of it's not a kind of beginner's bike really. But having said that, I have lent it. We went to we organised these little track days at a lovely place called Filching Manor on the South Downs. It's like a private motor museum with a go-kart track, and It's great fun on this kind of thing. Such fun. I did actually lend it to somebody, and he was really impressed. I lent it to him, thinking, "Oh, really? It's kind of little old bike. What's he going to think?" But actually, he came back beaming. He loved it. Loved it. A lot of people upgrade these to the 4-speed gearbox, which Velocette brought out a couple of years after this came out, and which I haven't done because it is a 3-speed, so that's how I ride it. But that is probably quite a sensible thing to do if you've got a 4-speed gearbox kicking around. Other than that, if you see one and you like the idea of something unmanageable, go for it. With the Velocette, they do say you need to be an engineer, which I'm not, or have access to somebody that is. This is a great bike for kind of going out on club runs with other suitable bikes. It's not going to be the fastest thing on the planet compared to a modern bike, but for its age, it's great, and it's great for going around tiny little lanes because it's so small and so manoeuvrable. So yeah, I've been on the Sunbeam Club Romney Marsh run on it this year and took it to the Isle of Man, which was great. Sadly, the VMCC aren't doing the track day at Derby anymore, so I didn't get to do that this year, but maybe they'll bring it back next year. But yeah, it's a great bike. I mean, obviously, the suspension is minimal. There's some springing on the rear seat there, and that's it. So, but I don't find it too uncomfortable going long distances. But what I do need to do is replace the seat because I split the seat cover on it. When it came, the old seat cover was just too far gone. But luckily, at Ardingly last month, I managed to buy these two. So this, somebody's making these seat covers, repro seat covers, and this is the Dunlop dry elastic seat. So got a little job there to fit that. Obviously got to put the holes in it, put the rivets in. But I think what I'll do next time is I'll get some kind of like reinforcing to put under there before, and then put the holes in, and hopefully that will stop it going there. Yeah, so yeah, and stick the badge on the back as well. Before I bought that, I picked up this, which was about the same price, but it's again, that is the rubber. This is an original one. You can see the canvas webbing there, and then the rubber's on top of it. But I'm not sure how. You have got the seat foam on this as well, although the seat foam is okay on this one. So yeah, normally seats, that's the single saddle seat on this type of bike. You've got a series of springs underneath it, which would provide you with the comfort factor, whereas this one, the spring is really in the rubber. Yeah, so the reproduction cover there, you can see it's not far off the original. Yeah, he's put the little mouldings in on the side there, and yeah, you've got the edge there, but it's not cracked. I think as soon as if I put that on, as soon as I start using it, it's just going to crack there, which is not very comfortable, I have to say. Anyway, another little job. So I better get it started up. Not the easiest bike in the world to start. You have to follow the starting procedure, otherwise you could be there all day kicking and nothing will happen apart from you'll flood it and you'll have too much petrol in the plug, and then you'll have to get the plug out and clean the plug off, etc. Yeah, I mean, obviously a twin is always going to be more easy to start than a single, because with the twin, say like with an 850cc Commando, you're not kicking over 850cc's, you're kicking over half of that, so you're kicking over just over 400cc's. So, whereas with the single, a 350 single, you're kicking over 350cc's, or 500 if it's a 500 single. And of course, you only get one chance per revolution of starting it. Whereas with the twin, you get two chances because you've got a spark plug in each cylinder, if that makes sense. So the Velocettes are notorious for being difficult to start, but the main thing I've found is you've got to read the manual and follow the instructions, because if you don't, you can kick till you're blue in the face and nothing will happen. Right, let's get this started. So it's oil on, petrol on, push on, and then you tickle it up. You've got a tickle on the carburetor there. And probably what I'll do is once it's tickled up, I'll switch the petrol off, because petrol will start gushing out. think we're just about there. There we go. Right, let's get started. And of course I need to retard the ignition to about there. This is a slack wire advance, so the lever goes clockwise to advance, but the cable is actually tightening up for the retard and advancing with the slack cable. So let's take it off the stand. This is one reason you don't use the seat to move your bike around, because I think that has contributed to braking. But it has got a nice little grab rail on the back, because back in the day these bikes, they were used for everything. This would be doing trials at the weekend, off-road, and then ride to work during the week. You know, maybe even a bit of racing. These bikes would do anything. Yeah, one thing you've got to remember with these stands, the rear stand is actually on the rear wheel spindle, rather than on the more modern bikes it's underneath the engine. So when you push it onto the rear stand, it actually comes back about a good foot. Everyone's got to remember that when you're parking it. There we go. See if it's returning. Oh yeah.